Planting your own food is always a good idea, not for doomsday prepping, but for various other reasons. I wrote 2 articles on doomsday prepping and how it may or may not work. This article, however, explores the necessity for planting your own veggies. This is an opinion piece written and produced by Pierre Anthony and narrated by me, Andrew. For the health nuts, gardening provides a source of fresh and hopefully not contaminated nutritious produce. By contaminated, I mean without the chemical pesticide and things like that. But it is not just for the health nut, it is prudent for everyone. Space and water are naturally the big problem, and things like compost you can do yourself. Gardening like that is about learning what works and what does not work. Some veggies are just awful to eat, and probably a good idea to avoid planting them, just to keep your own sanity. I'm not a health nut, and I mean it in the best way, but for the last few years, started to plant my own veggies, according to my means. It is unlikely that I will become totally independent, because, unlike others, have no open area to plant, but I have a small, paved area where I put some containers to plant in. The trick is to find ways to maximize every inch of the garden. I am also not a world authority on gardening, but it is worth sharing some ideas and looking at some common mistakes, or in my case, some stupid mistakes. Even somebody living in a flat can start a garden, which would probably be very tiny, but it is worth it. I find putting some mint on the windowsill helps with that fresh smell, and if you have problems with mosquitoes, mint can help, together with lavender and rosemary can help keep them at bay, especially in the summer. Naturally, mint and rosemary help cook delicious food. But it is not just the food. It helps with relaxation. And it matters not if rich or poor, there are benefits. The focus is mainly on starting a garden on the low down, and when work was plentiful, money was plentiful, and at that time, gardening was the last thing on my mind. The pandemic made me realize that I must do something, and it amazes me sometimes that the poor, where I find myself these days, would rather spend all effort on taking drugs instead of trying a garden, but I do have empathy. As the world changes, it is becoming increasingly difficult to survive. Besides that, we are bombarded with all kinds of doomsday events threatening to take even the bit we have left. Enough of that, when you do not have money, and you watch videos of people just going to the store to buy stuff, containers, food for the garden, piping for water, and so on, it is sometimes discouraging, because you simply do not have the means for that. I got hold of some old wood pallets, and I took them apart and made planters out of them. I used garbage bags to line it, but my first mistake was not to put enough drainage in the bottom, which caused some problems. I soon saw the error of my ways, took the soil out, and made better drainage. The second problem I had was soil. I found some sandy soil where I stayed, but it seems the soil was rather depleted in nutrients for the plants. I did not have enough money to spend on buying compost, so I used every kitchen scrap I could to revitalize the soil. The other benefit I gained from that was it taught me patience. Usually, I wanted things now, not to wait, but I had to practice patience. It was hard, I tell you, but it paid off. So, by removing most of the soil, I started putting kitchen scraps in layers, and as it rotted away, it released nutrients into the soil. Not long after, I had a container looking as if I just added potting soil and compost from a shop. Okay, it took the whole winter, and apologize if I made it sound as if it was almost instant. The other thing is I went on the hunt for earthworms. You can buy them, but again, turning the pennies, I took an old plastic paint bucket, made holes in the bottom, and placed it in the sandy soil next to our place. It is a 4-foot gap between the flat and the perimeter wall. Nothing really grew in that small strip, but I used kitchen scraps to try and lure the earthworms into the plastic container. Patience, they did not arrive overnight, but somehow, they came from somewhere, not sure from where because everything around us was built up. Anyway, once I got some earthworms, I put 1 or 2 into my planters, and that really helped speed up the composting process. It helped turn the previous sandy soil into a darker, rich soil for me to plant things. If you live in the desert, where it rains 3 drops in a year, I don't have any answers, but if you can afford it, install rainwater tanks and try and catch every drop from your roof, or rely on municipal water, or do it the old-fashioned way, rain. With just water, I did manage to get some things to grow, although the soil seemed dead, so water is very, very important. A good source of nutrients for you is cabbage. I know, not everyone likes cabbage, and if you like me, a meat eater, cabbage and lettuce are for bunnies, not people. Anyway, I now love both cabbage and meat. Actually, there were a time when a salad was for other people. Not me, rather a steak if you please, but now I quite enjoy a salad from my garden. I sometimes even prefer a salad, go figure. Look, if you cannot afford a planter, or a bucket of some sort, use a plastic bag. Yes, it looks terrible, but you can plant stuff and have a few meals from it. Having planters or containers higher than the ground helps people like me, not a spring chicken anymore. Besides, I only have a small, paved area where I can put stuff. How do you know what to plant, especially if you have a small space? This needs some thinking. Firstly, consider why you want to plant something. In other words, the reason. Is it for health? Is it for survival? Is it nice to have? Or everything I just said? Then consider the available space, because someone with a large space can plant many things, and in my case, a small space that I have to plant smartly to maximize every single space. Now that you have the space to plant stuff, you have an idea why you want to plant stuff. Now also look at the weather. Consider how you can maximize water usage. In some countries or areas, rain is scarce, and municipal water may be expensive, or not entirely suitable, but important. Gardening needs daily water. Some plants are less water hungry, while others need more water. Planting medium is important, and as in my case, introduced more nutrients into the soil by using kitchen scraps. What kind of kitchen scraps, you may ask? Well, eggshells, potato peels, in fact, all vegetable peels, vegetable offcuts, like the ends of carrots and onions. Anything plant, and therefore, when I weed the planters, I even now leave the pulled-out weeds in the planter. Except if they are ready to shoot seeds, then I throw them in my compost paint bucket. Engaging with nature and working in a garden can reduce stress, improve mood, and enhance mental clarity. Gardening has been shown to have therapeutic effects and can be a form of mindfulness. But, like me, previously wanted everything now, it took learning patience. Home gardening can reduce your carbon footprint. Growing your food means less reliance on store-bought produce, which often involves transportation and packaging that contribute to environmental degradation. Regarding the whole carbon thing, I'm a little bit confused because carbon makes plants grow much better. Besides, they then give back lovely oxygen, but the packaging thing I do understand. By growing your own vegetables and fruits, you contribute to sustainable living. You can practice organic gardening, which avoids the use of harmful pesticides and fertilizers, promoting healthier ecosystems. Growing your own food can save money on grocery bills. While there are initial costs for seeds, tools, and supplies, the long-term savings can be significant. Now, the term own food should be understood that you grow stuff to eat, and not necessarily your own food, as in everything you need. That may be a bit of a stretch. Gardening provides a hands-on way to learn about biology, ecology, and the food production process. It's an excellent educational activity for children, teaching them about nature, responsibility, and the value of hard work. Home gardening increases food security by providing a reliable source of fresh produce. This can be particularly valuable during times of supply chain disruptions or economic uncertainty. In my case, I plant what I can. It does help a bit, seeing that I have limited space, but for someone with plenty of space, it could reduce the grocery bill considerably. Gardening can foster a sense of community. Sharing gardening tips, exchanging surplus produce, or participating in community gardens can strengthen social bonds and create a supportive network. Home gardens can support biodiversity by providing habitats for pollinators like bees and butterflies, as well as other beneficial insects and wildlife. Birds can sometimes scratch out some seeds, although not really a big problem, but it could attract unwanted visitors, like rodents. These benefits make home gardening a rewarding and beneficial activity for individuals and families. The reality is that it could help with your own sense of worth, and with that, I refer to spending time in your garden and not taking drugs, as an example to get away from the stress people are under. Most people have some sort of space to do something, and even if you are not healthy or battling to get around, gardening is a slow process, so you can take your time. But besides space and water, the available space, different things grow at different times. Winter and summer veggies are also important and also dependent on the weather, so some research and experimenting are required to try and have something growing in both winter and summer. Something else is planting some flowers. This helps to attract bees, and they help with pollination. I also grew a lemon tree in a container, not just for the fruit, which is a great source of vitamin C, but the flowers attract bees. The lemon tree size is limited by the container, and pruning the tree helps keep it small enough so that it does not take up much space. I would one day change to hydroponics, but my budget does not allow that at the moment. The advantage of that is that one can incorporate fish, also a great source of protein. I would love to have a couple of chickens too, but unfortunately, space is my enemy, and besides, chicken feed could be costly, unless you could feed them from your garden. There are plenty of ideas, like keeping rabbits, but the slaughtering thing is a problem. You need some guts to do that. But they multiply easily, and with good planning, they can provide you with additional food. Not a pretty picture, I know, but something to consider. Making money from a home garden is probably not going to work, especially in a sustainable way. I guess if you have plenty of space, you could sell some of the surplus to buy seed and other requirements. I see some people grow cannabis as a source of money, but honestly, I have an issue with that and would probably not sleep well, knowing it could destroy someone's life. However, I know there are some benefits from planting and using cannabis, like cannabis oil and tea. Not for drugs. I have not planted it and do not know the requirements for planting it, but it could have some very good benefits. Not smoking it. There are plenty of tips on how to grow stuff, and some work, and some do not. That is why I recommend researching and trying and learning by error. Other ideas, depending on how far you want to go, are building a small digester and making your own natural gas for cooking and perhaps heating. Be aware, though, it can be very dangerous. In my case, it would be a waste of time to try a digester. I do not have enough organic materials to feed it, and I will produce too little gas to use in a burner. But something to think about. In some countries where the unemployment rate is low, gardening can be a perfect relaxation method, or even supplementing food for the house. In some countries, the unemployment rate is high, so a home garden not only helps with reducing stress and the like, but becomes an important supply of food, or even survival. In India, some people come up with innovative ideas to survive, like building biodigesters for gas, stoves to burn wood, or even burning the gas they produce. They build these stoves from bricks, even clay or metal. The point is that home gardens for food are worth it, and instead of procrastinating, get going.